Good day, this is Janelle Ann Cruz from BIP4A FSM, and today we will be discussing the continuation under the Chapter 6 Philippine National Building Code. And these are the things that we will be discussing today, such as guidelines of easements, law of enhance of PWD, and guidelines on sidewalks, parking, and signages. So first, we will be discussing the guidelines of easements. So let's just define what is easements. So as it is situated outside of private property limits, the easement is public land that is public domain that should be equally enjoyed by all members of the community. The easement is not to be used for any form of building or structure that may go against its public recreational character, and as such, the following uses and the others similar thereto are absolutely prohibited. And these are: first, residential and like uses, whether temporary or permanent; second, long-term or overnight vehicle parking, that is, unless duly designated, or day or night pay parking zones; third, as a depository of stalled, wrecked, or abandoned vehicles, mechanical devices, and the like; the fourth, the conduct of specific commercial, institutional, or industrial activities not compatible with its stated character; and fifth, unauthorized recreational or entertainment usage and the like, which will only benefit certain entities and which will ultimately result in inconvenience, nuisance, safety problems to the general public. 101. And lastly, any other form of private use, gain, enjoyment, or profit at the expense of the motoring or walking public. And now we'll be discussing the law to enhance mobility of disabled persons. PWD law, or also known as Batas Pambansa Bilang 344, an act to enhance the mobility of disabled persons by requiring certain buildings, institutions, establishments, and public utilities to install facilities and other devices. So under that law, Rule number 2, minimum requirements for accessibility. Number 1 is categories of disabled person, such as letter A, impairments requiring confinement to wheelchairs, or letter B, impairments causing difficulty or insecurity in walking or climbing stairs, or requiring the use of braces, crutches, or other artificial supports, or impairment caused by amputation, arthritis, spastic condition, or pulmonary. Letter C, total or partial impairments of hearing or sight causing insecurity or likelihood of exposure to danger in public places. Or lastly, letter D, mental, whether acquired or congenital in nature. And second, under rule, the basic planning requirements. Letter A, the accessibility. Letter B, reachability. Letter C, usability. Letter D, orientation. Letter E, safety. And lastly, letter F, workability and efficiency. And on regards to the outside and around buildings, the drop curbs, as we can see on this picture, so it changes in level at walkways should be affected by slight ramps and drop curbs. And drop curbs should be provided at pedestrian crossings at the end of the footpaths of a private street or access road. Curb cutouts. Below are the example picture. Curb cutouts should only be allowed when it will not obstruct a walkway or in any way lessen the width of a walkway. And the minimum width of a curb cutout should be 0.90 meter. Next, walkways, as the picture shows below as well. Walkways should be kept as level as possible and provided with slip-resistant material. And walkways should have a minimum width of 1.20 meters. And also, walkway headroom should not be less than 2 meters and should preferably be higher. Next, there is an example picture below as well for handrails. Handrails shall be installed at 0.90 meter and 0.70 meter above steps or ramps. Next is the open spaces. There is an example picture below as well. Where open spaces are provided, the blind can become particularly disoriented. Therefore, it is extremely helpful if any walkway or paths can be given defined edges either by the use of planters. So it's either the grass area defines edge of a walkway and the planters of define as the back of the walkway. Next is signages. So below are example pictures of signages. Where open spaces are provided, the blind can become particularly disordered. So therefore, it is extremely helpful if any walkway or paths can be defined. Signs should be first kept simple and easy to understand. Second, made of contrasting color and gray values to make detection and reading easy. And also signs on walls, doors should be located at the maximum height of 1.60 meter and a minimum height of 1.40 meters. And another signages is on the labeling public rooms and places should have raised symbols, letters, or numbers with a minimum height of 1 millimeter. Next is parking. So parking spaces for disabled should allow enough space for a person to transfer to a wheelchair from a vehicle. And below is the example picture. The accessible parking spaces should be located as close as possible to building entrances or to accessible entrance. On the other hand, for inside buildings and in structures, so below are the pictures. We'll show an example of entrances. So at least one entrance to every building should be accessible from arrival and departure. In case entrances are not on the same level of site, arrival grade, ramps should be provided as access to entrance level. Pictures was an example of ramps. And also entrances with vestibules shall be provided at a level area with at least a 1.80 meter depth and a 1.50 meter width. Next is ramps. So ramps changes in level require a ramp except when served by a drop curb, an elevator, or other mechanical device. And also ramps shall have a minimum clear width of 1.20 meter. Second, a handrail will be provided on both sides of a ramp at 0.70 meter and 0.90 from the ramp level. And ramps shall be equipped with the curbs on both sides with a minimum height of 0.10 meter. And also, any ramp with a rise greater than 0.20 meter and leads then towards an area here vehicular traffic is possible have a railing across the full width of its lower end, not less than 1.50 meter from the foot of the ramp. Next, washroom and toilets. In order to aid visually impaired persons to readily determine whether a washroom is for men or for women, the signage on men's washroom door shall be equilateral triangle with a vertex pointing upward, and those for women shall be a circle. And the picture will show the example. So the totally blind could touch the edge of signs and easily determine whether it is a straight or curved. So let's just now discuss the guidelines and sidewalks. So subject to existing laws and regulations, the local planning authority shall determine which street shall have an open sidewalk or an arcaded or covered sidewalk or a combination of both. So the minimum width of a sidewalk for a row width of 9 meters or more shall be 1.20 meters on each side of row, or a total of 2.40 40 meters on both sides of the row. Pictures will show an example of the size of the sidewalks. And also, sidewalks shall be of uniform width throughout the entire length of the street. The sidewalk with grade and finish of the dominant use or occupancy along the row shall be generally observed. And also, minimum width of planting strip for grass and shrubs is 200 millimeter for each side of the row. The minimum width of planting strip or for trees is 300 millimeter for each side of the row. And also, the sidewalk pavement shall have a non-slip surface and shall slope down from the building line towards the curb line at not more than 1 or 50 shall level off with the curb. The sample photo below will also shows an ideal planting strip location in sidewalks. Sidewalks shall, as much as possible, be level and uniform grade throughout the entire length of the street. The photo below shows the example of this. And however, for the obstruction of sidewalks, under no circumstances shall obstruction of any kind be allowed on sidewalks, whether open or arcaded. This specifically refers to all forms of commercial signs and commercial structures that impede sight lines or pedestrian traffic along the sidewalk. So the two pictures will provide examples of the obstructions on the sidewalk. And that's all for today. Have a great day.